Good evening, America. I am Daniel Carter, and this is Daniel Carter Reports. Let me ask you something tonight, not as a broadcaster, but as someone who has studied global conflict for over 2 decades. At what point does a regional war stop being regional? At what point do we stop using careful diplomatic language and call something exactly what it is? Because what is unfolding right now, in real time, is no longer a limited engagement between 2 hostile nations. What we are watching right now is the architecture of a global war being assembled piece by piece, alliance by alliance, missile strike by missile strike. And tonight, here on Daniel Carter Reports, we are going to break it all down for you. Every detail, every player, every dangerous consequence. Because the American people and the world deserves the truth. Following a massive wave of Iranian ballistic missile strikes that lit up the night skies across the Gulf region, strikes that reached Dubai, Dhahran, Manama, and beyond, 3 governments sat down and released a joint statement. France, Germany, the United Kingdom, 3 of Europe's greatest military powers. They released a unified statement declaring that they are prepared, their word, not mine, prepared to defend their interests and allies. Now let that settle in for just a moment. Not a condemnation, not a diplomatic note of concern, not a press conference expressing worry, a declaration of readiness, a statement of intent. When you say prepared to defend, you are talking about operational military posture. And they went further. They called Iran's missile campaign indiscriminate, disproportionate, an act that struck sovereign nations that had no direct involvement in the initial phase of hostilities. And that line, that specific line, changes the entire legal and military framework of this conflict. First, the United States and Israel conducted coordinated strikes against Iranian military positions. That was Phase 1. Then came Phase 2, Iran's response. And it was not surgical. It was a massive, multi-vector retaliation using ballistic missiles and drone swarms, strategic military installations, commercial infrastructure, energy corridors that the entire global economy depends on. Air defense systems in the region were pushed to their absolute limits. Several were overwhelmed. Explosions erupted in cities. Shipping lanes, trillions of dollars in annual trade, suddenly became war zones. Oil pipelines came under threat. This is not a regional confrontation anymore, people. This is multi-front warfare. And when you have multi-front warfare striking civilian infrastructure across multiple sovereign nations, you have crossed a threshold. The United Kingdom is not simply a Western ally. It is a nuclear-armed state. It sits as a permanent member of the UN Security Council. France, another nuclear power. Another blue water navy. When France says it is prepared to act, it has the hardware and the political will. And Germany, which has dramatically and deliberately increased its defense spending. Germany is no longer sitting on the sidelines. When these 3 nations speak in one unified voice, it is not symbolic. It is coordinated policy. It is operational signaling. This is not a faraway region with problems that don't affect your life. The Gulf is the economic artery of the entire planet. Every barrel that gets disrupted sends a shockwave through markets. Americans feel it at the gas pump. Supply chains collapse. The Gulf has become the meeting point of 4 of the world's most powerful military blocs, all converging in one of the most critical waterways. This is how global economic catastrophes begin, and it is also, historically speaking, how global wars begin. World War I did not begin with a global declaration. It began with a single assassination in Sarajevo. One event, one trigger. World War II followed a similar pattern: regional invasions, diplomatic failures, appeasement that emboldened aggressors. Tonight I am not here to tell you World War III has officially begun. I am not here to spread panic. That is not what Daniel Carter Reports does. But I am here to tell you that the pattern we are witnessing right now, alliance systems activating, nuclear powers issuing statements, this pattern has a historical name. Now, let's be clear about what Iran was trying to accomplish with this missile campaign. The strategy was straightforward: deterrence through shock. Expand the battlefield beyond Israel so that the United States and its allies face a conflict too large and too complex to manage. And in some tactical ways, it worked. Air defense systems were tested to their limits. The psychological impact across the Gulf was enormous. But here is where the strategy may have triggered something far larger than Iran anticipated. By striking neutral nations, Iran gave Europe a justification to intervene. Once European citizens or interests face a threat, the political calculus in London, Paris, and Berlin changes completely. Domestic pressure demands action. Scenario 1. European naval deployments. Carrier strike groups and destroyer escorts moving into Gulf waters is no longer a hypothetical. Scenario 2. Joint air patrols. U.S. and European aircraft conducting coordinated air defense patrols over the Gulf, protecting shipping lanes and assets. Scenario 3. Expanded economic warfare. Sweeping new sanctions. Cyber operations targeting Iranian command and control infrastructure. Scenario 4. Direct military engagement if European assets are struck. If a British or French soldier dies, the pressure becomes irresistible. And Scenario 5. NATO activation. If the alliance determines an attack constitutes an Article 5 trigger, this conflict transforms into a transcontinental confrontation. We are at the tipping point right now tonight. On one side, the United States, Israel, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, Europe's economic and increasingly military giant. On the other side, Iran, with sophisticated ballistic missiles, an extensive drone arsenal, and a network of regional proxy forces. And then, the silent observers. The global powers who have not yet declared their position but are watching every move with intense interest. This is not a Middle East conflict anymore. This is a global security architecture in real-time restructuring. Is there a formal declaration of World War III? No. No president or prime minister has stood at a podium and announced the world is at war. But let me ask you this. Modern wars do not begin with speeches. They begin with missile trajectories. They begin with naval fleets repositioning. They begin with emergency cabinet meetings and defense briefings at 3 a.m. All of those things are happening right now. The question is no longer whether this is a global conflict. The question is whether we are honest enough to call it what it is. Here is where we stand tonight. America. France, Germany, and the United Kingdom have made their statement. Prepared to defend. Prepared to act. The chessboard is set, and unlike a regular chess match, the pieces on this board are nuclear powers. I am going to leave you with one final question tonight. Talk about it with your family. Think about it before you go to sleep. At what point do we acknowledge that what we are watching might be the opening chapter of something history will remember for generations? I am Daniel Carter. This is Daniel Carter Reports. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. Good night, America. God bless.